when you're at NAPE this February 2024, February 7th through the 9th, you're going to hear people like Anne Bradbury. We talk to her next on this episode of The Crude Truth.
In 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, the future of Texas changed dramatically as, like a fountain of fortune, thousands of barrels of oil burst from the earth towards the sky. Soon, Detroit would be cranking out Model Ts by the millions, and America was on the move, thanks to the black gold being produced in Texas. Now, more than a century later, the vehicles are different, but nothing else has truly changed. Sure, there may be many other alternative energy sources like wind and solar and electric. But let's be honest, America depends on oil and entrepreneurs, and if the USA is truly going to be independent, it has to know the crude truth.
NAPE is a proud sponsor of The Crude Truth. Be sure to register for the NAPE Expo 2024, February 7th through the 9th at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, Texas. Hurry and register today. NAPE, where deals happen.
This episode is brought to you by LFS Chemistry, committed to being good stewards of the environment and providing the tools so you can be too. NAPE Expo, where deals happen. Air Compressor Solutions. When everything is on the line, Air Compressor Solutions is the dependable choice to keep commercial business powered up. Sandstone Group. Exec Crew. Elevate your network, elevate your knowledge. Oil and Gas Workers Association. Pecos Country Operating. Fueling our future.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the time of day it is. Thank you as always for tuning in for another episode of The Crude Truth. Well, as you all know, I am proud to say that NAPE is a sponsor of The Crude Truth, and that we will have a recording studio at NAPE this year, as you've all heard, I'm sure. And one thing that we're very excited about are all the great speakers that are lined up to be speaking this year at NAPE. Two of the headliners are going to be, the number one headliner is going to be Anne Bradbury, and then the second one is going to be Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, of course. But the one that I have on today is Anne Bradbury. She's the president and CEO of the American Exploration and Production Council. She leads, y'all, all aspects of federal public policy efforts advocating for the regulation and policies that help enable the United States producers like Pecos Country Operating to continue leading the world in energy development that meets the highest environmental and safety standards. Anne, welcome to The Crude Truth.
Thanks, Ray. Great to be here.
Oh my gosh, it's such an honor. Like I was briefly telling you before we jumped on this episode to record, I had an awesome chance to listen to you last year at the Texas Alliance of Energy Producer Summit in Fort Worth. And you have come on board, I think, technically not too long ago, 2019, but Yep. You have been blazing a trail for the oil and gas industry, like to where it almost seems like you've been there for a lot longer than that. And, Ann could tell the listeners a little bit about you that have not heard.
Sure, yeah. So, Ray, as you point out, I actually started at AXPC just over 4 years ago, and the organization has been building slowly but steadily since then, and we're really proud of what we built. So our focus is federal advocacy. We advocate on behalf of the leading independent producers here in Washington on all matters of regulatory policy and legislation that impacts federal production. So we work with members of Congress, we work with the EPA, we work with DOI to try to steer federal policies to be supportive or at least not detrimental to American energy producers. So we've been at this mission for a little over 4 years now, and have just in these short 4 years have seen a lot of ups and downs. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's a great industry, and I'm so proud to represent them in Washington.
It's 2019. I mean, it has been. I think you came in at the right time. I think God put you in there because God knows it has not been easy, especially with this new administration wanting to continue to shut down oil every day, and of course natural gas. I mean, they're at COP28. That's the time we're recording right now, and COP28 is going on right now, and that's one of the big pushes over there. What are your thoughts on that, real quick?
Yeah. So, COP28 is happening right now. This one is fairly interesting because it's been dubbed the oil and gas COP because it is being hosted in the UAE, by an oil and gas state. So it's had a bit of a different flavor, but just the very controversy around should oil and gas have a seat at the table in these global climate discussions is like kind of unbelievable to me, right? Like oil and gas, produce the vast majority of, the world's energy systems, or leading the way in producing ever cleaner oil and gas. They're not going away anytime soon, right? Like oil and gas are going to be here for decades to come. And yet, people are questioning, should we even have a seat at the table? And you see that internationally, you see that domestically. And that's a frustrating conversation, right? So that being said, I have a number of companies that are over there right now participating in the discussions, and I'm glad that industry is continuing to at least try to ensure that they have a seat at the table, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And whether, even if we have to, elbow our way in there, like it's important that oil and gas is part of these conversations.
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. It's crazy that we even have to elbow our way into these conversations. I'm at a summit myself in Florida right now, and I sat down with some individuals this morning, and they were like, "Well, what do you think about all this transition?" I said, "It's great." I said, "But we all have to work together if we really want to make these." And I'm going to use parentheses here for all our listeners, changes that they want to make. It's not one or the other. It is everybody they talk about inclusion, and they want to include all the different, well, we got to include all aspects of energy to really make a big difference.
Right. I actually had the honor of testifying before the House Energy and Commerce yesterday, as sort of the lead up to a delegation that's going to COP later this week, and talked to the committee about the important role that oil and gas has to play in this conversation, and how policy shouldn't be picking winners and losers. We should be looking for the best available solutions, and that energy policy, climate policy, and national security are all inextricably linked. You can't try to impact climate policy without impacting energy policy, which also impacts national security policy, which impacts economic policy, right? Energy is the foundation for all of these things. And you have to look at all of them as linked as they are.
Yes, I agree. And it's again, I just think what you're doing, and I think it's also, I want to point out, and I should have done this in the intro about you. Not only have you spoken in front of the House of Representatives representing the oil, for oil and gas, but you've also been seen on Fox Business, and several other large stations, out there advocating for oil and gas. And I should have mentioned that in the beginning. But saying that, I want to transition to NAPE. NAPE 2024, as you know, NAPE is a very big deal to the oil and gas industry. The tagline for NAPE is NAPE, where deals happen. And you are going to be speaking at this event, and if people, individuals out there that have not bought tickets yet and haven't got the speaker package of that's where you can go in and listen to Anne, I recommend it. And that's Anne, really why I wanted you to come on today, to kind of just talk about what it is, maybe a few teasers about what it is that you're going to be talking about, and what you're excited about coming back to the great state of Texas.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm very excited about coming back to the great state of Texas. It's one of my favorite parts of this job, is the ability to sort of get out of Washington and talk to real people. So very excited for that. It's actually my first time at NAPE. I've never been. I know all about it, and I've heard all about it. But I'm excited to be there in person this year. So I'm super excited. My portion at NAPE is I'm going to be talking about almost kind of what we alluded to before, which is, oil and gas's essential place in the global energy mix, and specifically American oil and gas's essential place in the global energy mix, how it underpins our economy, and how we can also have a seat at the table, and should have a seat at the table in climate discussions as well, right? All of these conversations are intertwined, and we have an essential role to play and an essential voice in all of them. And then sort of as part of that, also talking about sort of the intersection of energy and politics in Washington. So what can we expect to see out of Washington in the next year? What, are some of the potential impacts of the election? Obviously, energy is a highly regulated industry, and what's coming out of Washington can have a pretty significant impact on the energy industry, and operationally, how these policies impact oil and gas companies. So I'll be trying to preview some of that as well.
I'm just so excited to have you there, and I've listened to you speak before, and the knowledge and the data that you bring to your to when you speak is just so exciting, because facts are friendly, and you bring them and you share with others, and that's what we're supposed to do. I kind of my same way as I talk about with God. I believe in God, but I'm not going to shove the Bible down your throat. But I'll give you some facts, and then you take with it what you want, and that's what I do with the oil and gas producer. It's like, hey, we drill oil wells, we produce oil. Here's what we do, and this is how we do our best, is to follow all the rules and regulations to keep the Railroad Commission happy, so to speak, here in Texas.
Yeah. I actually, just building on that, I think that's one of our really important roles that we play in Washington too. And we kicked off an initiative this year called Energy Education. And because part of what we learned with, a lot of our, over the last few years is that, policymakers who are, writing the laws and regulation that impact industry, aren't necessarily as informed on both our day-to-day operations, but also the historical context of American energy production, the important role that we play, the energy revolution over the last 15 years, and the impact that it's had on this country in terms of our economic growth, our national security, and the climate benefits that has accrued as a result. And so we have this whole energy education deck that we present to policymakers, because I think if you are presented with the facts, you can sort of narrow down the conversation and have a more informed conversation, and a more informed conversation really benefits industry.
Oh, absolutely. Just it really goes a long way. And the energy education, we need it all, even from the grade school levels. And because, why is it that now oil and gas and other parts of the energy sector, fossil fuels as they call them, those jobs, people are not graduating as much. I think there's been a 50% decrease in that as well. And that's just another way that we need to be educating those. And as we move into 2024, like I told you in our pre-meeting, we're gonna this episode will be releasing here in January, the beginning of the month of the year. Where do you see you guys going, and are there any important policies that we need as small independents or just oil and gas people need to be aware of and help getting the word out here to fight with you guys for 2024?
So, for better or worse, I sort of describe 2024 as the year that the regulatory tsunami is cresting, right? So there are a lot of regulations that have been in the works for the last 3 years that haven't yet been implemented or taken effect. And the Biden administration is going to be very focused on finalizing those regulations and implementing them in what might be the last year of their administration. So the first one we're seeing right now is the methane rule out of EPA, known as Quad O. That was just dropped over the weekend. It's 1,600 pages, so we're still digesting it. But that's certainly going to have a big impact on industry. Soon to follow after that, we're going to see implementing language for the methane tax, which will be assessed on 2024 emissions. So that's something that, is something that we're working really hard on. Obviously, we oppose the methane tax. We think it's punitive on American producers. And unfortunately, they're changing the underlying math of the methane tax, because they're rewriting the Subpart W reporting rules. And so it's going to artificially inflate a lot of companies' emissions and then artificially inflate the tax that you have to pay on them. So I would say in the sort of emission space, these are the three things that we're most focused on: is the Quad O methane regulations, the methane tax implementing rules, and the Subpart W reporting rules. But on top of that, if less important for a Texas producer, but DOI continues to work on rules related to federal land production, Endangered Species Act listings, which can impact both public and private lands, and the SEC for public companies, but also tangentially impacting private companies, are getting ready to finalize their climate disclosure rule. So we're really, seeing it from all sides, and 2024 is going to be the year that these things hit. And so staying informed and anticipating all of this is going to be really important for the industry.
Well, you said it, and that's why I said yes, ma'am. It's like we're going to get it from all sides, and we just have to be strong and do our due diligence. And for individuals out there that want to keep up with these policies and want to see what the American Exploration and Production Council is up to, how can they get a hold of you guys? Or find out this research? Yes.
So axpc.org is our website. Anyone can sign up for our newsletter and alerts right on our website. Welcome to do so. We not only sort of try to send updates related to sort of policy developments in Washington, but also, you mentioned the election, sort of when are important, voting dates that are coming up. How do you register to vote? How do you vote in your particular state? We want to make sure that not only are people informed, they're also engaged. And so you can sign up on our website for those updates. You can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram and all the socials, and LinkedIn. We have a blog where we try to do sort of explainers on some of these issues in a way that's a little bit more digestible than sort of the regulatory language. So, I'd encourage people to check out our blog to sort of look at, sort of help unpack some of these more complicated issues. And if there are things, especially, related to upstream that, folks are trying to understand a little better, and want to learn a little more about, like, feel free to reach out, and we're always happy to take those suggestions and questions.
Oh, man. Well, and I'm just excited. Again, we're just about 2 months away from NAPE. I'm excited to have you back here in Texas. So, NAPE Expo is February 7th through the 9th at the George R. Brown Convention Center there in Houston. Definitely want to bring your jacket. Last year was a pretty cold one for us. And I think the year before that, we were all wearing short sleeve, polos. And just, you never know what the weather is going to be.
I'm not worried about Texas's winter.
Well, and again, I cannot thank you enough for doing this interview on the CRUDE TRUTH. I'm just so excited because I know I've wanted you to be on the show now since I've been doing it for 2 years, and was just a great opportunity to visit with you. And what I'd like to do here down the road is get you back on again and talk more detail about policy, if that's something that you'd be interested in.
Absolutely, that sounds great. Glad we finally made this happen, and look forward to seeing you in a couple months.
Yes, ma'am. Well, and thank you so much. And to all listeners out there, again, NAPE Expo, February 7th through the 9th. And we'll see you next time on another episode of the CRUDE TRUTH.
Again, thank you to our sponsors: LFS Chemistry, NAPE Expo, Air Compressor Solutions, Exec Crew, Oil and Gas Workers Association, Pecos Country Operating.
The easiest way to start your own podcast and TV show? Real News Communications Network. Stand out from your competition. Produce streams of high-quality social media content. Become a thought leader in your industry. With RNCN, you get to be the host. We handle everything else. Tour one of our 3 locations in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the Colony. Call 972-402-6333 or visit launchashow.com to find out more.